Let's talk about a story that often flies under the radar when we discuss India's history, the Champaran episode. It's an incredible tale of how one determined farmer, plus a brand new form of protest, completely changed the game in the fight for independence. And it all kicked off with a single decision Gandhi made in one very important year.
You know, this whole story really starts with Gandhi himself. Looking back on his life, he points to one specific year, 1917, as the moment it all crystallized for him, the moment he knew for sure that the British had to leave India. So what on earth happened in 1917 to cause such a massive shift?
Well, you might be surprised to hear that the story doesn't actually begin with Gandhi. The real hero, the guy who set everything in motion, was someone you've probably never heard of. He was a poor, illiterate sharecropper from a place called Champaran. His name was Raj Kumar Shukla.
So here's the deal in Champaran. The system was basically a trap. The peasants were stuck in these long-term contracts where they had to plant 15% of their land with indigo. And then, the real kicker, they had to hand over the entire harvest to their British landlords as rent. It was a brutal, oppressive system designed to keep them poor and, more importantly, afraid. But Rajkumar Shukla, he'd had enough. He couldn't read or write, but he was absolutely resolute. So he journeyed all the way to the big Indian National Congress meeting in Lucknow. His mission was simple: find somebody, anybody, to help them fight back. Someone there told him, "You need to talk to Gandhi." And that's exactly what he set out to do. But here's the thing. Gandhi was a very busy man with appointments scheduled all over the country. And this is where Shukla's unbelievable determination kicks in. He didn't just ask once and give up. Oh no, he followed Gandhi. He followed him from Lucknow to Kanpur. He followed him all the way back to his ashram in Ahmedabad. He literally camped out for weeks, just repeating his plea over and over. Fix a date. Finally, Gandhi, just blown away by this sharecropper's persistence, said, "Okay, meet me in Calcutta in a few months." And you better believe, when Gandhi got there, Shukla was waiting. So when Gandhi finally arrives in the area, he doesn't just launch into a big protest. His approach is way more methodical than that. First things first, he needs to understand the problem from the inside out. He goes into full-on detective mode, starting a detailed investigation to get the facts straight from the peasants. And this is where he has this massive realization. It's a huge turning point. After talking to everyone, he sees that the legal system is totally useless here. Why? Because the peasants are absolutely paralyzed with fear. They're terrified of the landlords, terrified of the government. He realized the real battle wasn't going to be in a courtroom. The real battle was for their minds. The goal had to be freedom from fear. So right away, the battle lines are drawn. It's so clear. Gandhi's goal is simple: just give me the facts. The British response? They slam the door in his face. The Landlords Association calls him an outsider and refuses to give him any info. Then the British commissioner basically tries to bully him, telling him to get out of town immediately. Of course, Gandhi doesn't leave. Instead, he heads to Motihari, the capital of Champaran, and sets up a base of operations. And just as you'd expect, an official notice shows up, ordering him to leave. His response? It was a bombshell. He signed the receipt to prove he got it and then wrote right on it that he would disobey the order. The result was swift, a summons to show up in court the very next day. Okay, so this is it. The stage is set for a massive showdown. You've got Gandhi, a lawyer who respects the law, about to openly break it in a British court. And news of this spread like wildfire through the countryside. And the next morning, something absolutely incredible happens. Thousands of peasants, the same people who had been too scared to even whisper a complaint, they all marched to Motihari on their own and surround the courthouse. They didn't even know who Gandhi really was, just that a Mahatma who wanted to help them was in trouble with the authorities. This, right here, was the beginning of their liberation from fear. In court, Gandhi does something brilliant. He pleads guilty, but then he reads a statement. He explains that he's facing a conflict of duties. He tells the judge, "Look, I'm not trying to disrespect your law, but I have a higher law I must obey, the voice of my conscience, which tells me I have to stay and serve these people." He was laying out the core idea of civil disobedience for everyone to see. The British officials were just dumbfounded. They were totally baffled. How do you deal with a guy who willingly breaks a law he thinks is wrong and accepts the punishment, especially when thousands of his supporters are right outside? They had no playbook for this. They delayed the trial, and a few days later, the lieutenant governor just ordered the whole case to be dropped.
For the first time in modern India, civil disobedience had won.
But winning in court, that was just round one. The next fight was about the money, the cash that had been illegally squeezed out of the peasants after synthetic indigo was invented in Germany, which made their crops basically worthless overnight.
So, an official commission is formed, and Gandhi is on it, representing the peasants. The evidence they gathered was just a mountain of proof against the landlords. It was so overwhelming, they had no choice but to agree to pay refunds. So they turned to Gandhi and asked the big question. All right, how much must we pay? Now, the planters were probably thinking Gandhi would demand every last rupee back, the full 100%. So he completely surprised them by only asking for half, 50%. Then their negotiator, probably trying to be clever, comes back with a tiny offer of just 25%. And to everyone's absolute shock, Gandhi immediately says, "Done. We'll take it."
So why? Why would he settle for so little? Well, Gandhi explained that the amount of money was never the most important thing. The real victory was the principle behind it. For the very first time, the British landlords were forced to give up not just their money, but something far more valuable, their prestige. They had to publicly admit that they were wrong, that they were not above the law.
And the long-term impact of this was massive. It completely broke the planters' power. Within just a few years, they abandoned their estates. The land went back to the peasants, and the whole corrupt system of indigo sharecropping just vanished. But the biggest change? It was in the people. They learned they had rights. They learned they had people who would defend them. And most importantly, they learned courage. But you see, for Gandhi, this was never just about politics or economics. He looked around Champaran and saw deep social problems, and he knew his job wasn't finished. He kicked off this amazing mission to totally uplift the community. He got volunteers, including his wife and his son, to come and start primary schools. They taught people basic hygiene, community sanitation. A doctor volunteered for 6 months to tackle the terrible health issues. Gandhi was trying to build a new Indian, someone who could stand proudly on their own 2 feet. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most powerful lesson of this whole story. At one point, a well-meaning English friend offered to stay and help their fight. Gandhi's response was a hard no. He said that looking for a prop, a savior, in an Englishman to fight other Englishmen just showed the weakness of your heart. True freedom, he taught them, couldn't be given by an outsider. It had to be won from within, through their own strength, their own self-reliance. And that powerful idea, born there in Champaran, that courage, freedom from fear, and self-reliance are all tied together, would become the very heart of India's long walk to freedom.